As you may know, crimes in Japan occur very rarely because it's currently one of the safest countries in the world. However, when a crime does happen, it tends to be so extreme that the entire world discusses it. This is because crimes in Japan are usually very brutal, but since Japan is widely discussed, I don't want to dedicate a separate video to each Japanese crime. Instead, I have created a crime iceberg ranging from horrifying to terrifying ones. In other words, as usual, the less horrific crimes at the top, but as you descend to the bottom of the iceberg, things become increasingly eerie and unimaginably terrifying. Therefore, I recommend you watch until the end. Now, let's begin. The first crime, the tip of our iceberg, is not supposed to be as brutal as usual, but that's not the case here. Since today's video is about the most gruesome crimes, even the top of the iceberg is no easy matter. This one is about a girl named Yuka Takaoka, born on January 28, 1998, who's an only child. As an adult, she dropped out of university to become the manager of a hostess bar in Shinjuku, where she lived. By the way, Shinjuku is a district in Tokyo. Hostess bars are extremely popular establishments in East Asia, part of the so-called nightlife industry. Their clients are mainly men who pay to hire a woman for her company, but without any intimate continuation. The hostesses usually just serve drinks, give compliments, and engage in pleasant conversation with the customers. Yuka was a fan of anime. She frequently posted photos of her cosplay of favorite characters on Twitter and Instagram. She was quite shy, and all her acquaintances described her as a calm and extremely sweet girl. One of Yuka's favorite types of cosplay was yandere. The term yandere refers to a mentally unstable anime character. Usually, these are girls whose insanity is not apparent under normal circumstances, but they are willing to do anything for their beloved. In October, Yuka met a guy named Phoenix Luna who worked at a nearby host bar. A host bar is essentially the same as a hostess bar, except that it caters to female clients. Phoenix was popular both in Shinjuku and beyond the doors of his host bar. He often appeared on the wall of fame, as many women who paid for his company would return to the same place for him. Since Yuka and Phoenix worked in the same industry, they became close friends, and after a few dates, they even started dating. However, not everything in their relationship was smooth. Since Phoenix had to interact and flirt with women for work, Yuka started to get jealous. Her jealousy kept growing to the point where she would visit the host bar and pay for all of Phoenix's services for a month in advance. Despite some misunderstandings, things were going surprisingly well in their relationship and the couple was happy. One weekend, Yuka invited Phoenix over to her place. He arrived late after his shift, took a shower, and went to bed. While he was asleep, Yuka went through his phone and found a girl who couldn't be one of his clients, since Yuka had bought all his services. But she didn't try to find out about her from Phoenix himself like an ordinary person. After some time, Phoenix suddenly felt a sharp pain in his abdomen. He opened his eyes, looked down, and saw a knife sticking out of his belly. Startled, he looked around and saw Yuka looming over him. Fueled by pure adrenaline, he pushed her away, jumped out of bed, and ran out of the room. Yuka chased after him and grabbed him as he crossed the apartment's threshold. He was taller and stronger, and with another push, he freed himself from Yuka's grip and dashed toward the elevator. By this time, Phoenix was losing a lot of blood. The elevator doors closed and he descended to the first floor. When the doors opened, Phoenix rushed forward. He almost made it to safety before collapsing unconscious. Yuka caught up with Phoenix, who is lying to the lobby unconscious, with the blood pooling around him. A passerby noticed the horrifying scene, turned around, and immediately called the police. But Yuka didn't run. She sat down next to his body. In the time it took the police to arrive, Yuka managed to write a letter with his blood, repeatedly writing "I love you" over and over again. When the Tokyo police realized what had happened, they immediately arrested Yuka. After the attack, she gained popularity on social media, with people comparing her to a yandere and admiring her even though it should have been the opposite. She's a criminal who should not have received such attention. Despite being a fairly brutal crime, Phoenix survived, which is why this story is at the top of the iceberg. Going further down the iceberg, we encounter a crime involving a victim. This story is about a girl named Azumi Muto, who is born on June 13th, 1986 in Shibuya, Tokyo. She was the youngest in a family with two older brothers, the younger of whom was 21 years old and named Yuki Muto. The Muto family owned a dental clinic which the parents expected to pass on their children and eventually their grandchildren. The Muto parents valued the Japanese tradition that inheritance is the most important thing in a family, and according to this tradition, no one in the family has the right to choose a different path. Azumi's eldest brother had already followed in their parents' footsteps, graduating from university with excellent results. The parents expected the same from Yuki and Azumi. However, Yuki had always struggled in school and later failed to get into a prestigious university. On the other hand, Azumi was not happy with her parents' strict expectations. She hated the future her parents had imposed on her and began studying computer programming, as well as aspiring to become a model and actress, much to her parents' dismay. One day, due to the family conflict, Azumi left the family home to focus on her goals and managed to star in a few low-budget films as an actress model. However, after a few months, she ran out of money and returned to her parents' home, where she was surprisingly welcomed warmly by everyone, except her brother Yuki. Yuki had hated Azumi since childhood for her freedom in making her own choices and her success in school. From a young age, the parents had placed much higher hopes on Azumi than on Yuki. Moreover, at school, Yuki was considered rather strange. He had very few friends and mostly stayed in his bedroom at home. Despite this, his parents were unaware that their son was slowly harboring a growing rage, ready to explode at any moment. On December 30th, the parents and the eldest brother left for Fukushima to visit relatives, leaving Azumi and Yuki at home. Azumi didn't feel like going, while Yuki had a study camp planned for the New Year holidays. Before they left, Azumi had an argument with Yuki and their mother, and of course, it was about traditions. After half of the family had left, Azumi decided to enter her brother's room to confront him about many things he had said to her. Yuki told his sister that he was ashamed of her and that she should no longer be part of the family, which naturally angered Azumi. As the argument quickly escalated, Azumi shouted that he would never achieve anything worthwhile. Unfortunately, this caused him to snap. In a fit of rage, he grabbed his wooden sword and began striking Azumi repeatedly in the face. As she struggled, Yuki's blows became stronger and stronger. He was desperate to silence her, no matter what it took. Before the family returned, Yuki packed all his belongings into a backpack and prepared to leave for the camp. But before leaving, he decided to call his family and warn them not to enter his room, as there was a dead fish that he would clean up himself. When the parents arrived, they noticed an unpleasant smell and assumed it was the fish, so they didn't think much of it. However, over time, the smell became stronger, and they could no longer ignore it. Yuki's grandfather Mamoru decided to enter the room and discovered that Yuki's shark fish was alive and swimming in its tank. The smell was coming from Yuki's closet. Mamoru immediately opened it and found flesh and a lot of blood. Shocked, Mamoru recoiled and called the police. The body was identified as Azumi, and the police waited for Yuki to return so they could arrest him. According to investigators, after Yuki had beaten his sister, he strangled her for about 3 minutes, and to his horror, she was still breathing. He then drowned her in a bathtub and later concealed the crime by dismembering her body and placing the parts in a garbage bag. In court, Yuki was sentenced to 12 years in prison, which many considered far too lenient. His fate afterward remains unknown. And we continue our descent to the depths of the iceberg. Our next crime is quite well known, and I would have liked to make a separate video about it, but there's already too much content on YouTube about it, so let's include it in our iceberg. This is the story of a 22-year-old girl who was murdered in Japan in early 2007. Lindsay Hawker was born on December 30th, 1984 to Bill and Julia Hawker. Lindsay had two sisters, an older one, Lisa, and a younger one, Louise. She was from Brandon, near Coventry, England, England, United Kingdom. Lindsay earned a bachelor's degree in England from the University of Leeds. She decided to spend a year gaining experience teaching English before pursuing a master's degree. She loved learning about Japan, spoke Japanese, and studied Japanese traditions. Lindsay excitedly shared stories about Japan with her parents and sisters, especially emphasizing how safe it was. So she chose Japan as a country for her teaching practice. In October 2007, Lindsay moved to Tokyo, Japan. Her father Bill Hawker even bought her small lavender sachets to give to people she would meet in Japan. She started teaching English at the Nova language school chain on the outskirts of Tokyo. Lindsay lived with two other teachers from England. Lindsay had a boyfriend in England, Ryan Garside. They planned that he would fly to Tokyo to join her in the summer of 2007 so they could travel around Japan before returning to the UK together. Although Lindsay lived in Tokyo, she kept in touch with her family, friends, and boyfriends daily. In December 2006, her parents Bill and Julia, along with both of Lindsay's sisters, flew to Tokyo to celebrate her birthday together. Her parents were surprised at how well Lindsay had adapted to her new life. She spoke Japanese fluently, made friends, and interacted with locals. In general, she had become independent, and after making sure of this, her parents returned to the UK 2 days later, continuing to stay in touch with her every day as before. But on March 24th, 2007, something happened. Neither her family nor Ryan Garside could reach Lindsay. She also didn't respond to text messages. Due to the time difference, Tokyo is 8 hours ahead. Her family thought that maybe Lindsay had gone out with friends. But on March 25, Lindsay still hadn't gotten in touch. She was supposed to teach classes at the language school on Sunday, March 25, and Monday, March 26. But she didn't show up. Until then, Lindsay had been working 6 days a week and had never missed a single lesson. Worried, her family reported her disappearance to the police. Thus, on Monday, March 26, 2007, Lindsay Ann Hawker was officially declared missing. The police began searching for Lindsay. Her last message on social media was to her boyfriend Ryan Garside, and it read, "I love you very much, don't worry about the guy who followed me today. It's just crazy Japan, I miss you." After investigations, it was revealed that an accident occurred with Lindsay a few days before she disappeared. A man who was sitting across from her on the train got off at her stop. He told her that she was his English teacher. Lindsay replied that this was not true. But the man followed Lindsay to her house and asked if she would give him an English lesson. Lindsay kept refusing until he handed her a portrait of herself that he had drawn in the train. Thinking he wasn't so bad after all, Lindsay agreed to give the stranger a private English lesson. Lindsay had given private lessons before and it wasn't unusual. The school allowed teachers to do this, but there was specific rules to follow. The teacher had to meet the student only in public places and leave a note with the student's name and address. Lindsay left a note on a very drawing the stranger had given her. She wrote down his name, address, email, and phone number. A few days later, the lesson they planned began. On March 24, early in the morning, Lindsay left her house but forgot the note from the man. Still, she arrived at the cafe at 9 a.m. as planned. After an hour of lessons, the stranger needed to pay for the lesson. At that moment, he said he had forgotten his money at home and suggested they go to his house together so he could pay her, addicting that his house wasn't far. Lindsay, not suspecting anything, got into a taxi with him. After that, she was never heard from again. Fortunately, she had left that very note with the portrait at home as it played a crucial role in solving the crime. After finding the note at her house, the police immediately went to the address, which was the home of the man named in the note, Tatsuya Ichihashi. The police didn't rush to knock on the door, thinking they didn't have sufficient grounds for it. But after a while, Tatsuya himself walked out the door. When the police saw him, they said they had some questions for him. But the man suddenly ran away and surprisingly managed to escape from the police. An hour later, the investigation began inside the house. There was an unbearable smell in the house, but it was stronger on the balcony. For some reason, there was a bathtub filled with sand and compost soil. When the police opened the tub, they found Lindsay lady's naked body inside. Her body was bound, her mouth was gagged, and bruises were found on the left side of her face, indicating she had been assaulted and later murdered. As you can guess, it was already too late to save her. The police issued a warrant for Tatsuya Ichihashi's arrest and launched a case against him. It was discovered that Tatsuya had a Japanese girlfriend. They had been dating for a year and were planning to marry and start a family. He studied horticulture at Chiba University and lived in an apartment owned by his wealthy parents. His parents had not heard from Tatsuya since he fled from the police. A year later, Tatsuya Ichihashi was still on the run. Lindsay's parents flew to Tokyo and appealed to the people of Japan to help find the killer. A reward of 10 million yen was announced for any information, leading to Tatsuya's arrest. It took 2.5 years to find him. A ferry passenger traveling from Osaka to Okinawa recognized Tatsuya from photos. He informed port officials, who in turn alerted the police. Tatsuya was wearing a hat, sunglasses, and a surgical mask when he was arrested on November 10, 2009. The police discovered that since his escape, Tatsuya had been altering his appearance. He narrowed his nose and reduced his lower lip. He also used fake names and never stayed in one place for long. He completely avoided stores and other places with surveillance cameras. While on the run, Tatsuya managed to earn 1 million yen from construction jobs. Many doubted this, suspecting he might have received money from his wealthy parents, though this was never proven. Tatsuya spent most of this million on 2 plastic surgeries on his nose. The clinic staff who performed the surgeries took photos of him beforehand. They noticed that moles had been removed from his face using a crude method, which struck them as strange. The clinic notified the police about the surgeries. The police warned the public that Tatsuya Ichihashi was altering his appearance. Lindsay's parents flew to Japan for Ichihashi's trial. The criminal did not plead guilty, but in July 2011, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Under Japanese law, he will have to serve 10 years before becoming eligible for parole. The criminal wrote and published a book, Until I Was Arrested, in which he detailed how he evaded the police for 2.5 years. And so our video ends here. Of course, I would have liked to make it longer because there are many crimes in Japan, but I wouldn't have been able to release it quickly. Right now, I need to reach 1000 subscribers and 4000 watch hours to at least enable monetization. To do this, the interval between video releases shouldn't be too long. So if this video becomes popular, I will definitely release part 2, where we will continue descending the iceberg. And from there, the crimes only get harsher and harsher. Thanks for watching. Bye.